Imagine this. Every single person on Earth squeezing onto every boat, plane, and hot air balloon available. Their destination? Antarctica. A place so remote and inhospitable it's hard to imagine why anyone would want to go there. But here we are, embarking on the most ambitious migration in human history. A continent more accustomed to penguins and seals than 8 billion humans. The wildlife here has adapted to the harsh conditions over millennia, but for us, it's a whole new world. The icy winds, the endless snow, and the freezing temperatures are just the beginning of our challenges. Why? Well, let's just say it seemed like a good idea at the time. Maybe it was the allure of a fresh start, a blank slate in a place untouched by modern civilization. Or perhaps it was the desperation of a world running out of space and resources. Maybe it was climate change, maybe it was overcrowding, or the rising sea levels swallowing up our coastal cities. The reasons were many, and the decision was unanimous. We needed a new home, and Antarctica was the final frontier. Or maybe we all just really liked penguins. These adorable creatures became the unlikely mascots of our great migration, symbolizing hope and resilience in the face of adversity. Either way, the journey to the bottom of the world had begun. Families packed up their lives, businesses shut down, and entire cities were left empty. The logistics were mind-boggling, but the human spirit was undeterred. Now, moving house is never easy. It's stressful, chaotic, and often overwhelming. But moving an entire species to a continent colder than your freezer? That's an adventure. People bundled up in layers upon layers of clothing, struggling with their luggage in the snow, trying to keep warm in the biting cold. Imagine the lines at the passport office, the endless paperwork, the visas, the health checks. It was a bureaucratic nightmare. The traffic jams in the sky with airplanes queued up like never before. The air traffic controllers had their hands full, coordinating the largest airlift in history. The sheer volume of luggage was staggering. People brought everything they could carry, from essentials to sentimental items, hoping to recreate a semblance of home in the icy wilderness. And let's not even talk about the carbon footprint. The environmental impact of such a massive migration was unprecedented, but it was a risk we were willing to take for survival. This was a logistical nightmare on a scale never seen before. Coordinating millions of people, ensuring everyone had food, water, and shelter, and managing the transportation of goods and services was a Herculean task. But hey, at least the penguins would be excited. They watched curiously as the new inhabitants of their icy home arrived, perhaps wondering what these strange creatures were doing in their frozen paradise. The trip itself was no walk in the park either. From the moment we boarded the ship, it was clear that this journey would test our limits in more ways than one. The ship was packed to the brim, with every available inch of space occupied by passengers and their belongings. The cabins were so cramped that even turning around felt like a chore. It was as if we had signed up for a floating sardine can experience. Cramped quarters, seasickness, and the constant fear of running into a rogue iceberg became the norm. The ship rocked and swayed with the waves, making even the most seasoned travelers feel queasy. Every meal was a gamble, with many of us wondering if we would be able to keep it down. The fear of an iceberg lurking in the foggy distance added an extra layer of anxiety to our already fraught nerves. Imagine sharing a lifeboat with your nosy neighbor and a family of penguins. The lifeboats, meant for emergencies, became a source of both dread and amusement. We joked about who would get the best seat in the lifeboat, but deep down, we all hoped we would never have to find out. The thought of being crammed into a tiny boat with strangers and wildlife was both terrifying and oddly comforting. The in-flight entertainment consisted of watching glaciers drift by and endless games of Spot the Polar Bear. Spoiler alert, there are none in Antarctica. We spent hours on deck, staring at the icy landscape, hoping to catch a glimpse of something extraordinary. The monotony was broken only by the occasional sighting of a whale or a seal, which would send a ripple of excitement through the crowd. But for the most part, we were left to our own devices, finding ways to pass the time in the most mundane of activities. Food rations ran low, patience wore thinner, and the smell, let's just say it was an olfactory experience best forgotten. The limited food supplies meant that every meal was a lesson in patience and creativity. We learned to make do with what we had, often sharing our rations with those who had even less. The close quarters and lack of fresh air made for a less than pleasant aroma that permeated the ship. It was a smell that clung to our clothes and our memories, a constant reminder of the hardships we were enduring. But amidst the chaos, something strange happened. As the days turned into weeks, we began to adapt to our new reality. The initial discomfort gave way to a sense of camaraderie. We started to see each other not as strangers, but as fellow travelers on this shared journey. The barriers that had once separated us began to crumble, and we found ourselves opening up in ways we never thought possible. People started talking to each other, not just small talk but real, meaningful conversations. We shared our stories, our dreams, and our fears. We laughed together, cried together, and found solace in each other's company. The ship, once a place of discomfort and isolation, became a floating community where connections were forged and friendships were made, not about the weather or politics, but about their hopes, their fears, and their shared love for this crazy planet. We discovered that despite our differences, we had more in common than we ever imagined. Our shared experiences brought us closer together, and we found strength in our collective resilience. The journey, with all its discomforts, became a testament to the power of human connection. It seemed that being crammed together at the bottom of the world had a way of reminding us of our shared humanity. In the end, it wasn't the destination that mattered, but the journey and the people we shared it with. The hardships we faced became the glue that held us together, and the memories we made became the stories we would tell for years to come. The journey of 1,000 discomforts was, in many ways, a journey of 1,000 connections. Landing in Antarctica was like stepping onto another planet. The moment the plane door opened, a blast of frigid air greeted us, making it clear that this was no ordinary destination. The landscape was otherworldly, a frozen desert that seemed to stretch into infinity. A vast white expanse stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a blank canvas, untouched and pristine, where the only colors were the varying shades of white and blue. The ice fields and snow created a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic pattern that was both beautiful and intimidating. It was beautiful in a stark, unforgiving kind of way. The wind howled relentlessly, carrying with it tiny ice crystals that felt like needles against the skin. The landscape was a testament to nature's raw power, a place where only the strongest could survive. Think of the most breathtaking scenery you've ever seen, then dip it in liquid nitrogen and sprinkle it with penguin feathers. That was Antarctica. The icebergs stood like ancient sentinels, and the snow-covered mountains loomed majestically in the distance. Penguins waddled around, seemingly unfazed by the harsh conditions. The initial awe, however, quickly gave way to the harsh realities. Setting up camp in a blizzard was no easy task. The wind threatened to tear our tents apart, and the cold seeped into our bones despite our layers of thermal gear. Every task, no matter how simple, became a monumental challenge. The first breath of Antarctic air hit like a slap in the face. It was so cold that it felt like inhaling shards of glass. Our lungs burned, and our faces stung from the icy assault. It was a stark reminder that we were far from the comforts of home. Temperatures were colder than a polar bear's nose in winter, and the sun, well, let's just say it had taken an extended holiday. The perpetual twilight cast an eerie glow over the landscape, making it feel even more alien. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, and the usual markers of day and night were blurred. This wasn't a place for flip-flops and sunscreen. This was a land of parkas, thermal underwear, and a constant battle against frostbite. Every step was a struggle, and every breath was a reminder of the harshness of this frozen world. Yet, despite the challenges, there was a sense of awe and wonder that made it all worthwhile. Antarctica was a place of extremes, a land that tested the limits of human endurance and left an indelible mark on all who dared to venture there. Now, the penguins and seals, they were not amused. Imagine being a penguin enjoying your daily fish supper, when suddenly, billions of humans show up. Talk about ruining the ambiance. The local wildlife were definitely not prepared for this sudden influx of noisy, hungry neighbors. There were misunderstandings, of course, like the time someone tried to hail a ride from a walrus. Spoiler alert, they don't take kindly to that. Or when a group of tourists tried to order a pizza delivery to a penguin colony, the delivery driver is still lost in a blizzard. It was a comedy of errors, played out on a continent made of ice and penguin guano. Section 5. When igloos aren't enough, the housing crisis. Shelter or the lack thereof was the next hurdle. 8 billion people and a whole lot of ice. What could go wrong? Turns out, quite a lot. Igloos, while charming, weren't exactly designed for mass occupancy. Tents? Not a chance in those winds. We were going to need a bigger boat, or in this case, a lot more building materials. The quest for accommodation became an extreme sport. People were fighting over ice caves, building snow forts, and bartering penguin feathers for a patch of dry ground. The real estate market had gone from hot to Arctic blast in record time. Section 6, From Penguins to Pizza, the quest for sustenance. Then came the issue of food. You can't just order takeout when you're surrounded by glaciers and penguins. Sure, there were fish in the sea, but catching them in sub-zero temperatures with a makeshift fishing rod made of a stick and a shoelace? That was a special kind of challenge. Foraging for berries was out of the question. Antarctica isn't exactly known for its lush vegetation. And let's not even mention the water situation. Melting ice for a cup of tea takes on a whole new meaning when it's your only source of hydration. Section 7, Antarctica, not exactly a walk in the park. Life in Antarctica was, to put it mildly, an adjustment. Imagine trying to hail a cab in a blizzard, or finding a decent cup of coffee in a land where penguins outnumbered people. It was a crash course in survival, resourcefulness, and the importance of thermal underwear. There were triumphs, of course, like the time someone managed to build a working hot tub out of an iceberg and a spare hairdryer, or when a group of kids started a penguin sledding team. It was surprisingly popular. We were adapting, evolving, and learning to appreciate the simple things in life, like a working toilet and a warm pair of socks. Section 8. Lessons from the bottom of the world. Living in Antarctica, even if it was just hypothetical, taught us a thing or two. For starters, we learned that penguins are terrible conversationalists, but excellent dancers, especially after a few fish. We learned that humans are surprisingly adaptable, even when faced with extreme temperatures and a severe shortage of decent pizza. But most importantly, we learned that our planet is a precious, fragile thing, that we need to take care of it, not just for ourselves but for all the creatures who call it home, from the smallest penguin to the tallest human. Section 9, Homeward Bound, a new appreciation for Earth. Finally, the day came when we could return home. We packed our bags, said goodbye to our penguin pals, and boarded the first ships back to civilization. As we sailed away from that icy continent, we took with us a newfound respect for our planet and a determination to do better. We had learned the hard way that there's no place like home, even if that home doesn't come equipped with built-in ice rinks and penguin butlers. And maybe, just maybe, this whole Antarctic adventure was the wake-up call we needed to start treating our planet with the care and respect it deserves.